My name is Kay Salerno.
And I'm Shyla Morris, and we are the sister co-owners of the restaurant chain, The Squeeze In.
We are delighted to be with you guys today. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. We've got a great presentation for you, and so I think we should just pop right into the meat of it. I'm going to pop over into our screen share. Let me get up the PowerPoint for you guys.
Boom. Cracking the culture code. We're actually not really cracking it. We're just cracking open into it a little bit. As many of you know, culture is just like your financials. It's just like any other necessary piece of your business that is an ongoing effort that you look at, you work at, you refine, and you hone it, and you continue it forward.
Yep. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of back, when I was 10 and Shy was 17, our parents risked it all to purchase the single unit location of the Squeeze In Truckee, California. And overnight, Shyla and I gained a front row seat to the drama of American entrepreneurship.
We were that classic American small family business. After the day was done, because we're a breakfast and lunch restaurant, so we close at 2 p.m., we would go home and wash the laundry from the restaurant and bake the biscuits in the oven at home because there wasn't one at the tiny little restaurant, and then balance the books and write marketing plans and come back the next day and serve, cook, wash dishes, and do it all. When Mom and Dad bought that first little failing restaurant in Truckee, California, we really did gain that front row seat. And so we are young in years, but over the last 17 years since that day that Mom and Dad took over the restaurant, we have learned so much. I feel like we've had this compressed business
almost
experience.
Like business apprenticeship.
And now Mom and Dad got to retire 3 years ago, and Kay and I actively run the company, and a lot has happened in between there. You know, we could tell you about landing on Food Network, a throwdown with Bobby Flay, and the massive success that came from that. Or we could tell you how Mom and Dad had to move into my living room when I had a newborn and 2 3-year-old twins because we weren't going to make payroll that winter. Or we could tell you how we've been in the New York Times, or that we make 8 figures in revenue every year, or that we're across 4 states. Or we could tell you about learning some really hard lessons and going through some court battles and not knowing if we're going to survive. Or we could tell you about COVID or anything in between. But instead, what we really want to give you guys is a lot of value today. And we want to tell you some of the things that we've learned that we think can help you.
All right, guys, so don't just take it from us. We want you to really underline here that culture matters. You might be thinking that culture isn't really relevant for a bottom line, but when employees are motivated and engaged, it turns out that it can actually really help a business to grow. I mean, 46% of job seekers are citing that company culture is as very important when they're choosing to apply at a company. And this has never been more important than here in post-COVID, like post-quarantine. Because people are seeking jobs of where the leaders were stable, then the business was relatively stable throughout the shutdowns. And we're starting to see that the questions coming from employees applying are getting more complex.
They're asking, how did the leadership and management here react to COVID? How did they treat the people in this organization? What was their response protocol? And that's going to matter for a long time. And so culture is the thing. And we all say, okay, great, but like, what does that actually mean? How do we build a structure around it? How do we measure it so that it actually impacts the bottom line? Because we can see from all of these statistics here, it's clearly very important. And when little tiny hinges swing big doors, like a percentage point on the P&L can make a big difference. And when we're all competing for the same workforce, it can be tough. So knowing that 58% of employees will stay at a lower paying job if they have a great boss means that we got to say, okay, how do we cultivate a great boss, AKA have great company character and culture, so that we can keep those people and keep those percentage points on the bottom line.
So today we want to talk a little bit about what the practical application looks like of this. We're going to give you some examples of how we've applied these things to our business and show you maybe some of the areas that you can implement culture in your business. But before we do that, we want to share a quick video with you from a Disney cast member and a culture that we definitely admire, the culture of the Disney cast, because everybody wants to make sure they have a culture like this.
To all my fellow cast members, both near and far to me, with our gates closed and jobs awry, we all miss Disney. I know there's much uncertainty going through everyone's minds. It's hard to plan a future based on unprecedented times. So what do? Where do we go?
how great would it be if every employee that worked for you was that passionate to come back to work after a quarantine?
She is adorable. I still get goosebumps and kind of gulpy watching her. I mean, we're obviously big fans of Disney, but they're a company that's heralded for their culture. Any organization, including our own, is going to have people who have left it and say, they're not what they seem they are, and they are just terrible, and you don't know the true story. And certainly that happens everywhere, but that shouldn't hold us back from trying to create the best environment that we can, because look at what that matters to some people, to a lot of people, and creating an environment that cultivates character like that is priceless.
Well, as John Maxwell says, you're not as good as they say you are, you're not as bad as they say you are. So what exactly is culture? The definition of culture is the attitudes and behavior characteristic of a particular social group. So we're talking about a collective attitude and set of beliefs that then drive the behavior of the group as a whole.
And really the key principle here is that shared, right? Because a leader can have a vision and character and principles and behaviors, but if that doesn't translate to the rest of the organization, at least the majority of the time, then it's not shared. And now we're not being able to transfer quality character into quality culture, which is that macro expression of character within an organization. So then we ask, well, where do we find culture? And we really find them anytime that value is being exchanged within an organization, and not just money value. Of course, that's the big one, but there's lots of other things that we exchange that are of value: information, communication, time and attention, and all kinds of different things. So where we find culture is anytime that these exchanges of value are happening.
So you might be asking yourself, this is all well and good, but then how do we actually build culture? Well, we add value at these exchange points. If the thing that's being exchanged is the value of time or money or attention or communication, if we can add a little bit more value to that, aka give it a more streamlined communication, clearer incentives and goals, clearer company direction, oftentimes we can find that we can build culture simply by adding value to those little hinges that swing open those big doors. So let's talk a little bit about the forces of culture.
Yes, we're going to use some emojis in our presentation. You also saw us use a TikTok video, so clearly we're millennials, and appreciate you playing along with us as we present this information for you, because our goal is to make it fun and entertaining, but also, of course, to be educational for you. We've learned a lot of lessons the really hard way. We have embarrassed ourselves. We've lost money. We've lost face. We've had, I mean, just 2 summers ago, we were rolling out a new POS system and it did not go well. The POS system in a restaurant is the point of sale system, what they take the order on and put it into the kitchen. And it got so bad, we had an all hands meeting and somebody stood up and said, what are you going to do to address the morale? Like, we are not happy. And that was a tough moment. So anytime we can take a moment like that and glean all of the lessons out of it and bring it to an organization or a group like you and share what we've learned, our hope is that you don't have to have one of those embarrassing moments or feel one of those failures that can just hurt so much. And so by making it as entertaining as we can, as authentic to our age group as we can, we hope that we are able to deliver you a lot of value here so that you can add value to whatever organization or team that you're in. So when we look at these forces of culture, there's 2. There's a push and a pull, and there's not a negative and a positive. There's just 2 different faces and forces of culture that maybe we've been only looking at one side of for a long time.
Now, many of us are really familiar with the push side of culture values, those monetary incentives. I'll give you the $100 or the bonus, the positive quotes on the wall. In fact, I actually see some positive quotes on the wall. You can see our positive quotes on the wall. The annual party, the company mission statements, these are all push culture, those things that are very structural and set in place. Now, pull culture are the things that make people want to continue to stay, and not like, we're giving you reasons to stay. It's like we're giving you reasons to grow alongside the company. So pull forces of culture look like how the stated values of the company align with the practiced values, aka the integrity of the leadership of the organization. Shared values between the organization and the employee as an individual. Do their personal values values align with the values of the company, the purpose the group works to fulfill together. We've seen a vast increase in the amount of B Corps and socially responsible organizations, especially within these last 5 years. This is becoming very important. I think Gratis gives us a wonderful example of that. And finally, poll culture is the language that the company intentionally uses, because words mean things. And so when you have a boss who is dismissive or rude, it can oftentimes, they think they're being direct, but it can make somebody feel demeaned in the process. And when the language doesn't match the values of the company or the stated values of the company, there can be an unalignment within the employee and can oftentimes cause turnover.
Well, you think about even the classic language example from our favorite company, Disney, right? They don't call them employees, they call them cast members. And even in that video, you heard her say, to all my fellow cast members. And if we use an intentional word or a phrase like that, we help our team and our organization embody those words. And so, language and culture are very interconnected. So,
yeah, well, actually, even right within the squeeze ins, you are never, if you've ever dined in a squeeze in, first off, thank you. And we're sorry if you had a really bad experience. If anyone here has had
we try to get them most of the way right. We usually do.
But you never know. So if you've ever dined at a squeeze in, you will have probably heard an associate refer to you as a guest. We don't serve customers at the squeeze in. This is not a transactional thing. You are a guest within our restaurant. You're our priority. We want you to feel like you're a guest in our home. And we train our associates that way as well, because the language they use really matters. So we employ it right within squeeze too.
Mm-hmm. So the secret is we need both. And if you think about an individual or even just an object or an item that's trying to move along a path, it needs the force of push, especially in the beginning. A fledgling business, any of you are entrepreneurs, you have to push that thing hard. Push has to be part of it. But what can happen if we push too hard? That's that fall down part, right? That's that on your face because you pushed too hard and there wasn't enough footing, and it can eventually go flat on its face. And if we're only pulling something, we're also going to pull it flat on its face, and it's got nothing to fall back on. So if push stops, you stumble. If pull stops, you stumble. So by bringing in both, we can keep our organization and our goals upright and balanced as they move along down the path of growth that we seek to move them along. So both is really the way to create a culture that's enriching and positive.
It also creates a culture in a business that's a little bit more holistic for how the world works as a whole. I mean, what are the other things that push and pull? The ocean pushes and pulls.
Your heartbeat pushes and pulls.
The sun and the moon push and pull.
Right? The wind and your air breathes in and out. It pushes and pulls all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
A violin.
So it's more holistic to run a business with both culture forces, and you can find that you don't get quite as much burnout, and you can retain employees for longer, which we all know that retention increases the bottom line. So boom, culture increases the bottom line.
All right, first example.
First example. All right, so you might be wondering what roads lead to culture. And if you recognize this map, put it in the comments because I'd love to know, because it's quick. So what roads lead to culture? You might be wondering. Well, there are 4 main roads that we've identified within a business that lead to culture. Now, there are all kinds of different avenues and streets and places that you could go down in a business, but for the purpose of today's presentation, we picked these 4 main roads of culture.
So you've got leadership lane. This is your shareholders, your owners, the C-suite really. You've got business boulevard. This is where you find your systems, your administrators, the structure piece of it. Of course, employee avenue. This is all things having to do with the folks that work for the organization, the associates and the managers and the staff. And then you've got consumer street, where you've got the customers, the prospects, the clients, and the guests.
So when we're talking about within our metaphor of boulevards and avenues, where are the intersections? The question here is, how are we going to build a better infrastructure in order to create better culture? Well, the best thing that we can do to create better infrastructure is to focus on our value exchange intersections. So where do those streets come together, and how do we traffic plan well on those intersections to ensure that flow is going properly? And we all know that it's a much easier to identify when to stop and go at a traffic light than it is from a stop sign. So can we put in some upgrades to help these value exchange intersections really rock and roll for our business so that we can help our employees be happier and increase that bottom line?
I mean, think about, traffic, actual traffic, what happens when things are jammed up or they're gummed up or there's too much traffic for the intersection or the street to handle. Just things get backed up. They don't flow as easily. There's frustration, there's friction, there's extended deadlines. There's all kinds of different things in the practical, real example and in the example here that we're using as a metaphor for culture. So sometimes it's time to look at your stop sign and say it's time for a stoplight, or maybe a roundabout if you're feeling progressive. They work very well too, but it's time to do something to this intersection so that we can have a better flow. And we want to address two of these intersections with you today.
These two intersections, we're going to dive into our Leadership Lane and Business Boulevard, and Business Boulevard and Employee Avenue. So let's get into it.
All right, so first up, Leadership Lane and Business Boulevard. This is what first we want to ask, what are the values getting exchanged here, right? You've got information, decisions, communication, priorities. This is where the business, like the structure of the business and the systems of the business, meet with the leaders and the vision and what it is that they're trying to accomplish within the organization. And now how do we know if it's time to transform here?
Some signs that you might need a value exchange intersection transformation would be bottlenecking, especially at the decision maker level, distrust or withholding information, blame and finger pointing, stagnant profits, and high turnover in administration positions.
This is how we know that traffic is getting gummed up, especially at rush hour, and that we're creating that friction, frustration, and ultimately not the optimum flow for our business. So let's transform it.
All right, so how do we make it better? If we're going to implement the push culture here, we are going to invest in their professional growth. So for the leadership, we're talking about leadership skills, creating better leaders and better managers out of them. For the administrators, this might mean investing within their skill base and their skill level so that they feel professionally invested in, and you're going to gain something for the company in the long run as well.
Another way that we're investing in professional growth here on Business Boulevard is those system maintenance items that you might need. It might be time to upgrade the inventory. It might be time to look at the ways that we're measuring things and doing things and get some upgrades in place. So investing in professional growth at this level helps push the transformation of this intersection along.
Now, if we're pulling the transformation of this intersection, we're investing in personal growth. And this is a bit more progressive, but we're seeing it get implemented in companies all over the world, really, where we're bringing in more social, emotional learning, personal investment, goal setting on a personal level to show that you care about someone, to show that they're valued and a part of the company, even bringing them together for retreats where they have an opportunity to voice their opinions for the values or the shape or the direction or the future of the company, to really get those administrative roles who are in that direct line of fire really with your employees to sync up a little bit easier and hopefully have a better flow of communication.
We always say in the restaurant business that we happen to serve food, but we're really in the people business, and pretty much every other organization is going to be the same. So the widget, the service, it might be different, but most of us are in the people business. And we like to imagine the cartoon imagery of the smell of the pie.
Yeah.
And you're like smelling the pie. That's like what pull culture really does. It's that pie that smells so good. Personal growth is like that. Fired up you feel after a motivational speech, or you learn something new for the first time, or you get inspired by a story, or you have an amazing adventure at a zip line park. Something that helps you personally grow is like that pie smell that pulls you forward. So either way here, the way to transform this intersection is through growth. You see it in both sides. It's just a little bit different in order to get that more dimensional understanding of culture.
Now, the passing of time is going to happen anyway. So you're either going to lean in and intentionally grow, or you're going to lean out. But either way, you're going to grow. It just depends on if you're going to do it in a way that helps to transform these value exchange intersections. So don't just take it from us. In a 2013, a study by Korn Ferry analysts, David Zess and Dana Landis, titled "A Better Return on Self-Awareness Confirmed the Direct Relationship Between in leader self-awareness and organizational financial performance, meaning that the leader's level of awareness about themselves, aka that personal growth section, will help with the financial performance of the business overall.
I love this one from David Vance, who says, move away from thinking training is a cost to be minimized to thinking it's an expense that can help achieve company goals. Absolutely. Just like it's easy to say, well, we have to bring in bulk food in order to sell food. We have to bring in investment and training in order to increase our results and have less friction and better flow. So yeah, just don't just take our word for it. These experts say it works as well.
Yes, but then also take our word for it, because we invest personally in our associates in our company as well. And now, of course, this happened prior to the COVID crisis of 2020, but January of this year, we actually brought together about 100 of our associates and 100 other community members to engage in something that we affectionately called Growchella, where we brought in external speakers from community members. We spoke as well, but it had nothing to do with restaurants or how to serve orange juice, and everything to do with how they could achieve their goals and in empowering our people.
It was so amazing to see all of our associates come together. You can see some of the pictures here. They heard about topics like faith and belief and community and what that should mean to them personally, no matter what your religion is. They heard about fitness and health and why that's important to you, and some easy to apply tactics and tips that can help them make better choices and live healthier lives. We learned about baseline finances and how to figure out what your budget is for people who have no understanding of what that stuff means. Bringing in somebody who can help them just put a little bit of empowerment behind what your financial situation is helps them live better lives. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they pour coffee any better, or that they get an upsell at every table, or that they're definitely on time and they never cause issues, but it does mean that they're growing personally, which helps pull them towards wanting to be a better person, which helps your organization, and wanting to stay with your organization because you're willing to invest in them like this. We also had this event translated real time in Spanish for our primarily Spanish speaking back of the house cooks as well. And so 2 languages, a half day. We closed early. We brought them all in for Growchella. And boy, that investment could not have been better timed, because going into COVID, we were so grateful that we had made this investment in them, and they were incredibly loyal, super team squeeze, ready to serve in any way that they could. And it really paid off in the long run when we needed it the most.
Right. They were making less money, having to work extremely hard during the shutdowns when we were not able to do any kind of dine-in service. And from the front of the house to the back of the house, they stepped up and really pulled together as a team, not just for us, but for one another. And we really believe that this investment made early in the year was extremely helpful for us, because of course, we have the push culture stuff already in place, but having this pull culture invested in them prior to the shutdowns helped us when we needed to withdraw from the culture bucket because they weren't making the kind of money that they were used to. So definitely contributed to our success. All right, let's talk about the intersections of Business Boulevard and Employee Avenue. Now, this is when that business side of things, those administrators are coming into the employees, to your associates, and we're trying to communicate what company values look like, what brand identity is. You're talking money. This is where pay structures come into place. HR falls under this, accounting and administration. So there's a lot of information being exchanged at this particular intersection.
So it's time for a transformation here when we're seeing profits stagnate, when we've got high employee turnover, when there's low job satisfaction, when the hand gets raised and says, what are you doing about morale here? When you're seeing apathetic performance, right? It's about the exchange. I put in my hours, I've done my time, and I'm going home. This is where we know that this intersection needs a transformation.
Now, apathetic performance is such one of those silent killers in a business, and especially if you are a customer service facing business, this can be something that can really hurt your perception among the community. So let's figure out how we make this better.
All right. Well, just like growth was the way we transformed our earlier intersection, this is both push and pull are transformed through simplification of processes.
Now, for pushing someone and pushing this culture value, this looks like simplifying operation and system information. So really looking at the processes, the systems, and the efficiencies of the business, and fine tuning, like Shyla had mentioned before. Maybe it's a system that needs an upgrade. Maybe your inventory system is driving everyone crazy and it's bogging people down. Really practical example for you guys, just this last week, there's a sales reporting issue with our inventory process. And I found out that it's taking 10 hours of an administrator's time every single month just to upload sales reporting data into a system. And so we were able to go in and find a solution with our current point of sale system provider so that the sales could just automatically upload into the inventory system and the two could talk to each other, thus saving the 10 hours of productivity, time, and money out of a really valuable administrator for us to do other things and focus on other projects. So push culture in this place looks like simplifying operations in your system information.
And our pull culture here is by simplifying those values and culture information. So how do we make it more accessible and easy to understand what it is that we're trying to achieve beyond the bottom line? So what is it that we stand for as an organization? This is where your mission statement comes under play. This is where your values come under play. This is where your featured charities of the year come under play. How do we better communicate what it is that we're trying to achieve here so that it's very simple and accessible for everyone to understand almost immediately?
All right, guys, don't just take our word for it. According to Gallup data, only about 34% of US workers and 13% worldwide report that they're actually engaged in their workplace.
I found this one really interesting from Deborah Hamilton in her article, Top 10 Email Blunders That Cost Companies Money, that miscommunication costs even smaller companies of 100 employees an average of $420,000 a year. So sometimes it's easy to look at statistics and be like, well, that's about Fortune 500. But this one in particular, I mean, $500,000. Like $500,000 for 100 employees or less from miscommunication. Like clear communication could not be more important.
Absolutely. It makes me even just think of the 10 hours per week of the administrator. You know, if they're going to make in that $20 an hour zone, you times that 10 hours per week, but 40 hours every month, that's 480 hours every single year at that $20 mark. Like, shoot, you can see how something really small can add up to something really big if you're not attentive to the simplification when it comes to your culture. So don't
just take our word for it.
Now take our word for it. Now, we actually implemented this in the pull culture way by simplifying our mission statement from something that no one could understand to something incredibly easy to remember that everyone knows how to implement.
So it went from this big long paragraph that not even us, the owners, could understand, like remember. I mean, we could be like, extraordinarily delivers, it's something with community. Like, you know, the feeling that you want it to elicit. And that's where a lot of us get kind of bogged down in this, like, well, our mission has to be very well articulated because I need it to express that feeling. But what happens is you get the big paragraph and it becomes this just like printed thing in the employee handbook or like on the wall, and nobody actually knows what it is. You couldn't go up to somebody and say, what's the squeeze in mission statement? So we did a couple of larger sessions with all of our associates at first, and then with our leadership teams in order to come up with what is now our beloved 6-word mission statement. And everyone from the dishwasher all the way up here to our HQ office can tell you what that mission is like that, because it's easy. It's happy guests, happy associates every day. And what we realized once we went through this process with everyone and said, okay, what makes Squeeze special, and what is it that we're trying to do, and how do we get better at it and evolve, and how do we encapsulate this in a small and easy to understand phrase? The things that came out over and over again were kind of these core concepts that we realized were big broad strokes for everything that it is that we're doing. Happy guests, right? That's a safe, fun environment. That's a great atmosphere. That's quality food. Happy associates. That means we're building culture. It means we're having community impact. It means that we're encouraging a positive workplace every day. That's that consistency piece, right? Like, consistency compounds is like the #1 personal growth and development advice that there is. Every day helps us remember that we've got to strive for those 2 goals: happy guests, happy associates, every single day. And by doing this, everyone can embrace it. And that mission statement becomes more than a statement and less of a statement and more of a mission.
Well, it becomes that rallying cry, and that's what you're looking for in a mission statement. And then by giving something that's so short and concise as well, if any of you work with the millennials or the zillennials, the Gen Zs, this is a very instant, we are a very instant gratification generation. We learn to communicate in tweets and in TikToks and in 1-minute videos. And so short, easy to remember mission statements for these up and coming generations, which are many of our workforces, are really important in order to speak their language so that they can help you deliver what you're looking to deliver in your business.
Now, if you're having the bristle moment right now of, we shouldn't have to bend our communication to be simpler. We shouldn't have to make it just so accessible and dumb it down for that generation. And you're right, you shouldn't have to, but you should desire to be a good leader. And that means connecting with your team where they are. And if this makes your message and goal easier to accomplish, then it's something that we shouldn't die on that fence of like, but I'm right about it, and rather understand that I've got to be a little bit more flexible if I want to accomplish my goal, because at the end of the day, that's really what I want. It's not about being right on the communication or sticking to a rigid old way of doing things.
Yep. So we want to encourage you to simplify, especially here at Business Boulevard and Employee Avenue. We loved this quote when it came to transforming value exchanges because they transform business culture. And that's the conventional definition of management is getting work done through people, but real management is developing people through work. Like Shila said, it doesn't matter what business you're in the people business. And if you're selling anything to humans and you're making money because other humans are purchasing things from you, like you're in the people business. You just also have these other components. And, Shila and I are directly accountable to people, our administrators and the people who work within our HQ team. And they're directly accountable to our general managers at the restaurants, and they're directly accountable to their associates and to their staff. And so when we develop the people through the work that they're doing, we really find that they can manage in a more efficient way, and it can help the company be more holistic and more profitable.
This is probably my favorite quote in the whole presentation. I love it because we're big fans of the Joel Osteen principle, bloom where you're planted. He probably wasn't the first one to come up with it, but he's the one who said it that we heard first. So we like to attribute it to him, but it's so often we're looking for the answer outside of ourselves, or we're trying to seek that like next thing, or where am I going to find that development? Where am I going to be pushed and pulled? I feel like I belong somewhere, and realizing that you can belong right where you are if you've got someone competent that's leading you, or if you can lead yourself, that will develop through no matter what work it is, because all jobs have communication and expectations and budgets and schedules. And so whatever organization we go to, we're going to find those core components. It's about developing the people through those components, no matter what the specifics are.
Yep. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much. That concludes at least the core part of our presentation. We would love to open up for some questions for you guys. And if you would like to connect with us further, we would definitely encourage you to go to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook to @KayandShy, KayandShi, or you can pop over to our website. We'd love to have you on our podcast or in our daily newsletter.
All right. Come out of our screen share here.
Okay, can I share something, Dave? Dave's still on mute.
Sure.
Okay, so I just want to echo or reinforce Kay and Shila's comments. Shortly before, right about January, so it's interesting, same time frame, shortly before this COVID, I was asked to do a class on DISC. Now, many of you may be aware of DISC, some of you may not be aware of DISC. And it was for a shipping company. They ship around the globe. They got large ships. They do a lot of stuff for the government. And it's interesting that as I talked to that director afterwards, and it was for 3 locations. So it was a renal site, which is the bulk of the people, and then 2 remote sites. As I discussed with them afterwards, the improved communication was remarkable, because they begin to understand the different personalities and how they communicated, and what they needed to communicate for the 4 different behavioral types that they had. And so that's kind of like a similar support to what Kay and Shila's talked about, that personal investment in your people and how it really helps the organization and improve their communication. So I just want to add that that little secondary story to back them up. It's not just the restaurant business, but it's any business.
You know, one of the things that we did that was super fun and innovative last year was we took our managers, our core from both our franchises and from our corporate stores, and we took them up to the Tahoe Treetop Adventures up in Tahoe City. And right prior to going up onto the ropes course, we gave a real deep dive about purpose and passion and finding your calling and your passion within your career and helping them to feel grounded. And it was a really neat experience. And then we took them up and we let them loose on the ropes course. And what happened was incredible.
Yeah, they loved it. And we've done DISC with our team and Strengths Finders. It always has a massive and market improvement, and everybody feels more connected and cohesive. And we just always see morale really boost after that.
As you've increased the number of locations here in Idaho, Texas, California, what are the challenges that you found in dealing with all the things we've talked about?
The crossing state lines has been difficult in that the cultures are different everywhere that you go. Not necessarily the way of doing business culture, but the culture of the people. For instance, we actually had to shift our logo going into Texas because the peace sign is not accepted within the state of Texas. They think it's about California hippies. So we had to shift the logo in the Texas locations, actually has the Texas star instead of the peace sign in order to fit a little bit better with the culture of the guests.
Interesting.
Dave, can I share a quick little experience?
Say again?
Can I share a quick little experience?
Sure.
So going to your restaurant, there used to be years ago a restaurant called Craig's, and they had what they called the Blue Bayou omelet, and we really missed it. So we came to your restaurant and we got talking with the person who was taking our order, and we told them about this omelet, and they said, well, you know what, we could try making that for you. So we told them what was in it, and they made it for us. It was awesome. It was really cool.
See, that's happy guests is the number one thing. And as that we've evolved with that mission statement and really put it to the test with our managers and with our associates, we actually found that the mission statement could be applied to decision making. And so we've asked our managers to look through the filter of the mission statement in the order that it is given: happy guests, happy associates every day. So if they're in a situation where a guest is upset or a guest wants something that might be outlandish or outside of the scope of what we have on our menu, the answer is yes, because happy guest comes first. And, you know, it's about making sure that the associate is taken care of and that they're happy as well. And that everyday component, like the business has to run. So it still has to be afloat. We've got to be profitable. We have to be good at our ordering. We've got to make sure our taxes are paid, that everything's really on board as far as the business goes, so we can continue to do it every day. And so those three decision-making factors are always at play in the minds of our leaders. And we've built it into our training structure of the organization so that the culture is upheld.
It's also really great because, like, you can say to someone, if you're giving feedback, you're amazing at giving and making happy guests. But you also have to get along with the rest of your team. 33% is happy associates, which means you're also responsible for cultivating and creating an excellent experience and service for those within your tribe and team. And so that's been a really helpful way to use it as a structure rather than just a statement.
I got a question, Dave.
Go for it.
So first off, thank you so much for presenting. It's some really cool little tips on culture, which is hugely important. I 100% agree. And I'd like to share a story. I went to Squeeze In one time and actually got a cockroach in my omelet. Totally just kidding. That's completely untrue. But it leads me into my question, which is, how do you deal with online negative reviews, especially if they're untrue?
Well,
at first we did not deal with them well. let's just be honest. We were a family that took over the restaurant, just regular people getting into the Yelp world.
Like
and
back in 2007, 2008, Yelp was like to the heart knife, and people they say untrue things all the time, and you don't know where they're coming from, and Yelp's really shady to try and deal with, and it's
not Michael Tregesh here in town.
Michael is
our
amazing.
Local
Yeah,
Yelp
Reno
team is
Yelp.
amazing. Yeah.
But so it's been an evolution for sure. And what we found is really, we've put the structure around here is what we call the latte approach. It's listen, apologize, or if an apology is not in order, acknowledge, then you thank, you take action, and you evolve. So this is how kind of the structure we put around how to deal with reviews, but we're always saying, thank you for the feedback. I'm sorry that was your experience. What, you know, we'll work on whatever the issue is, or we'll talk to the staff, or we'll investigate further. And then if it's appropriate to offer a gift certificate or something, we always do. If it's not, then we just say, we really wish that you find a place that's more congruent for you, and we appreciate you giving our family's restaurant a try. We love having a positive impact on our local community. So we really try to bring it back to what our larger mission is. And if people are getting nasty, you can try and report it. You can try to ignore it, but we've really found just a gracious response is pretty much the fastest way to put out that fire that you can. But it has evolved over a long period of time for us to get to that point.
Nice.
David, I got a question.
Yes.
Yeah. So as
By the way, you can just ask questions. You don't have to. Everybody, go for it.
Just as business owners, who are you two surrounding yourselves with to help kind of get ideas to create the culture you guys want to create? Because over the past few weeks, I've just seen a tremendous growth in myself of just the people that, you know, I'm trying to put myself around so that I can grow individually. So I was curious, who are you guys surrounding yourselves with to get the growth of Squeezing to continue growing?
Stefan, I'm chuckling because I think I know how they're going to answer.
The first thing that we do when it comes to really growing the culture and the values of the business itself, when we're asking the question of what direction is our culture going to go in, we are really intentional about meeting with our managers and our leaders quite often. We cannot make decisions in a bubble from an office without understanding what our frontline workers are going through. And so having consistent conversations with those who are in the fire, if you will, is really important for driving the cultural values of the company. But we do have a lot of teachers and mentors that we plug into and love, one of which is Mr. John Maxwell. And we are actually right now in the middle of a leadership book club with our managers going over the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership with John. Shila and I have the privilege of serving as the Maxwell Method of Marketing faculty for the John Maxwell team, which is a team of 30,000 coaches, speakers, and trainers who do things like DISC and leadership trainings, mastermind groups, and lunch and learns in their local communities. And they're adding value all over the world. And we're blessed to get to teach on that too.
You know, it's kind of funny because I like to imagine that with motivation and people surrounding and decision making and all of that, that we have the push of all of the people who are on the front lines with our guests, that we survey our guests all the time.
All the time.
Sending out surveys and asking questions and communicate a lot with them. So that's kind of the push in terms of direction. The pull for us is definitely listening to those faraway mentors like John Maxwell. We're huge Tony Robbins fans. We've gone through his business mastery course. We've gone through several of his events. We love to read books, Atomic Habits and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And we can't not mention our mom, of course, has been an incredibly huge influence in our lives. She was reading us Deepak Chopra and Stephen Covey instead of Cinderella and Snow White when we were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. So we were really instilled with that love of seeking mentorship, which is actually why the name of our podcast is The Mentorship Quest. And every day it's only a 5-minute podcast, but we share one famous quote, what we think about it, and then an actionable quest so you can apply it to your life right away, because that's really the quest that we're on. So we're very pulled and motivated by finding what other experts and respectable leaders and influential people in the industry and beyond and in the world are doing so that we can learn from them.
Now that you have franchises in addition to restaurants you own completely, do you see differences in dealing with them, different challenges?
Oh yeah, yep. You're not managing people in the way of I pay you, and so you are doing a task. It's you're managing owners, and so it's a new dynamic, and they're paying you money to use your concept, and so they've got ideas that they want and things that they're looking for, and ideas of how things should go or how they shouldn't go, and it's definitely new territory, but we're getting better at it as time goes on.
It's definitely about who gets on the bus. You got to make sure there's that just community oriented, heart to heart. Like if you're going into business to make money, don't get into restaurants. The profits, the margins are razor thin. It's a lot of moving parts. It can be a tough workforce to deal with, but if you've got that passion and that love for it, and a lot of people do, then it's a great industry for you. And so making sure that someone has that passion and love combined with the community passion and love is really the winner for us.
We are probably the most terrible franchise salespeople ever, because literally in the sales process, people will come and have sit down in-person meetings with us. And we say, now, they say in order to get into restaurants, you must be crazy. So we just have to make sure, because it's kind of part of the qualification. Like you got a little bit of that in you, right? Because just slice, because that's what it takes to be successful in this industry.
So if you're in different states and different counties, how are you dealing with the differences in how COVID-19 rules and regulations are being implemented?
Well, one of the beauties of the franchising model is that really a franchisee is the 100% owner of that location. They pay the payroll. Their name is on everything. There are a lot of franchising laws in place that protect both the franchisee and the franchisor and splits responsibility. So when it comes to the specifics of where they are, that's really up to them. Now we say, here's what we're doing. Here's the communications we're putting out. Here's the resources we found. Here's what's working for you guys, and mastermind in that way. But ultimately it is their responsibility to be making sure that they're in alignment. And this is, certainly our first time being franchisors and our first time going through a pandemic. So we're learning a lot along the way. One of the stories that we didn't get the chance to share, Kate mentioned it briefly, was that we are involved with the John Maxwell team being their marketing faculty. And we got to do that because as our restaurant grew, people kept asking us, who does your guys' marketing? And we're like, well, we do. And so they said, well, then can you do ours? And we kept saying, no, no, no. And then sometimes in business, if enough people wave money at you for something, you should probably think about doing something about it. So we finally said, okay. And we opened a small marketing boutique agency and began marketing on behalf of other clients, restaurants, a franchisor, ironically enough. So when we joined the John Maxwell team in 2015, we saw that they weren't posting on social media. They didn't have a hashtag. They didn't name the event. And there was 2,000 people in this room getting certified under the leadership expert in the world named by Inc. magazine. So we went to the leadership there. We said, let us run the Facebook and the Twitter while we're here. We're dying seeing this missed opportunity. And that landed us 2 weeks later back in Palm Beach, Florida, negotiating a 7-figure contract to come build them the marketing system that they still use today. It's accounted for $100 million in sales. So Kay moved to Florida for 2 years, built that system with them, trained their team, handed the keys over to them. And then they said, well, now can you guys teach marketing to our coaches, speakers, and trainers, which is why we get to hold that position. And we love it. In fact, the big virtual online event is happening next weekend.
When I moved home, that was about 3 years ago now, Mom and Dad got to retire. So for those of you who know our parents well and love them, they are living the dream up in Oregon and have been retired now for 3 years. It's been really cool to see them flourish as Gaga and Papa.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys mentioned John and his Maxwell team, because a lot of folks out here in the West don't know John as well as do back East. So if you guys that don't know him, I encourage you really to look at some of his books. He's written over 70 plus books. So
he's written almost 100 books, which is crazy. I mean, he consults for the Pope and for presidents. They actually tried to attract him with a presidential run back in 2016, to which he declined because the political climate was just too rough. He is an upstanding guy. Having gotten to travel with him internationally, see him behind the curtains, he's like one of those leaders and authors who's actually the person that he presents in the book behind the stage. So it's really a gift to get to be in that circle.
Great. Well, you two were wonderful. And I think I speak for everybody that I learned a tremendous amount from you. So thank you so much for being with us today. We'll send the video out statewide tomorrow along with your PowerPoint. So if anybody missed anything, that'll be coming out tomorrow morning. And again, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone, so much. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great
Thank
job.
Awesome job, ladies.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Awesome
you
job.
very much.